Who are the greatest singers of all time? Rolling Stone thinks they have the answer in their newly updated Top 200 list. Did they get it right? Let's discuss right now on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so you won't miss future reviews and more. Rolling Stone magazine is kicking off the new year with a bang. On January 1st, New Year's Day, the magazine published their new updated list of the 200 greatest singers of all time. Similar to how Rolling Stone revisited their greatest albums of all time list in 2022, this updated list incorporates a number of new names that have made an impact on music in the 15 years since the previous list of greatest singers was released in 2008. To put that in perspective, there's now singers on this list that were in preschool the last time the rankings were compiled. Now I know we all sort of roll our eyes each time Rolling Stone puts out a new list, and these picks are certainly as questionable as ever. In fact, I'd say they're perhaps even more questionable. No Rolling Stone list is ever perfect or even close to being something we can unanimously agree on. But at least they usually try to inject some degree of democracy and musical credibility into the selection process. With the recent greatest albums list, the magazine recruited contributing opinions from a variety of well-known and respected artists and experts, spanning genres and generations. That's what they did with the previous greatest singers list in 2008 as well. But for the new 2023 edition, this appears to be strictly a staff picks situation. In fact, they tout that almost as if it was an upgrade from the, quote, elaborate voting process that included input from well-known musicians, unquote. The magazine says that prior approach resulted in a list that was dominated by singers from the classic rock era of the 60s and 70s. Okay, well, the same could be said of the previous editions of the other lists as well. The greatest albums list, again, was a perfect example. And while the 2022 version of the greatest albums list is still highly debatable, at least they found a way to compile the results by including external points of view. Not so with the 2023 greatest singers list. Rather than tapping into a pool of experts, they've done a sort of inter-office pool, I guess. Looking at the list of 27 contributors, you'd be hard-pressed to find more than one or two names you'd recognize. And again, you'd only recognize them as being writers from Rolling Stone. Rob Sheffield does the write-up for the singer that ranks at number one, because of course he does. The rest of the list of contributors is a veritable who's who of who's? As much as I enjoy talking about these lists with you all, I never take them very seriously. The credibility of this particular list, however, is more questionable than any other I can remember. But when music's longest-running and most legendary magazine co-signs on the rankings, people tend to take note, for better or worse. Now, I don't want to comment on every single name on the entire list of 200 singers here today. Actually, if you want to see that complete list, I'll scroll through the whole thing at the end of this video, so you could do a deep dive on that on your own if you like. But for the bulk of this video, what I'll do instead is highlight some interesting selections throughout the list, talk about a few glaring omissions, and finally make a few comments about the singers ranked in the top 10. And naturally, I welcome your comments as well, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below the video. A moment ago, I mentioned how Rolling Stone seemed to think their previous process for selecting the singers for their list was flawed. You think? For the 2023 rankings, they try to make it clear that greatest singer is not the same as greatest vocalist. Rather than this being strictly about technical vocal talent, here's how they describe their criteria. In all cases, what mattered most to us was originality, influence, the depth of an artist's catalog, and the breadth of their musical legacy. A voice can be gorgeous like Mariah Carey's, rugged like Toots Hibbert's, understated like Willie Nelson's, slippery and sumptuous like D'Angelo's, or bracing like Bob Dylan's. But in the end, the singers behind it are here for one reason. They can remake the world just by opening their mouths. I think it's important to share that with you because we need to at least understand what perspective they're supposedly using before we start tearing their choices apart. Straight away, they've referenced Bob Dylan, a very popular artist on this channel. As much as I love Dylan, I don't think I'd ever rank him among the best singers or vocalists of all time. Rolling Stone ranks him at number 15, a position that I think arguably owes much more to the man's status as a legendary songwriter than to his actual singing. Still, I'm not at all surprised to see him on the list. This is Rolling Stone magazine, after all. But as I said, the inclusion of so many more contemporary artists on this new list is no surprise at all, given the magazine's recent track record. Billie Eilish manages to sneak in at 198. It's also a sign of the times to see K-pop acts included, as well as acts from TV singing competitions. American Idol vocal powerhouses Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood rank at 194 and 158, respectively. Naturally, Beyoncé ranks pretty high on the list, but we'll talk more about that later. There's also a wide variety of genres represented here. I have a feeling that most of you, like me, would be unfamiliar with many of the Hispanic and world music names that made the list. Again, the diversity is intentional, but also may expose a bit of a double standard. Rolling Stone says the list is about artists that made quote-unquote pop music, or music that was popular to the masses. To that end, they say no opera is included. But wouldn't Luciano Pavarotti have merit? Or perhaps a more recent talent like Andrea Bocelli. Neither makes the list, but I'd argue both enjoyed as much or more popular crossover appeal than the many world artists whose names, for better or worse, I don't even recognize. I mean, seriously, I don't think even Sheffield knew who this Argentinian singer was before some Rolling Stone research intern sent him a link. Meanwhile, a singer whose biggest claim to fame may well be a feature on a Peter Gabriel song ranks at 91, but even the fact that the most famous opera singer of all time once featured on a song with U2 still wasn't enough to get him on the list. I suppose Pavarotti is in good company, though, because Peter Gabriel didn't make the list either. But Bono did. In any case, there's plenty of representation from pop and rock and R&B, as you'd expect, but also metal, with acts like Glenn Danzig at 199 and Ozzy Osbourne at 112. Iggy Pop comes in at 176. Country music voices are also well represented, from new acts like Chris Stapleton to icons like Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, and George Jones. From the alt-rock world, we get Robert Smith from The Cure, Michael Stipe from R.E.M., Tom York from Radiohead, and Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. All bands I love, but that kind of make me scratch my head here. I was honestly very pleased to see both Jeff Buckley and Florence Welch of Florence and the Machine included, though perhaps not at the expense of others. Seeing both Taylor Swift and The Weeknd on the list was no surprise considering the source, but whether they've earned it yet remains debatable. Meanwhile, legendary singers like Barbra Streisand, Nina Simone, Etta James, Frank Sinatra, and Ella Fitzgerald all show up as expected, but probably not as high as they deserve. Naturally, classic rock is well represented, in spite of it being characterized as the Achilles heel of the prior version of the list. Acts that ranked among the top 100 include Elton John at 100, Stevie Nicks at 93, Janis Joplin at 78, Bruce Springsteen at 77, Robert Plant at 63, Brian Wilson at 57, Tina Turner at 55, Mick Jagger at 52, Van Morrison at 37, David Bowie at 32, Paul McCartney at 26, Elvis Presley at 17, Freddie Mercury at 14, and John Lennon at number 12. All things considered, I'd fully expect to see all of those names on a list like this, but I'd never have ranked Lennon and McCartney so high, and there's no way that my top 10 wouldn't include Freddie Mercury. So how about the acts that didn't make the list? The entire internet seems to be up in arms about Celine Dion getting snubbed, and in light of her recent medical diagnosis, I can see how that omission stings even more. Speaking of stings, there's no Sting either, nor is there Elvis Costello, Jerry Garcia, Billy Joel, Paul Simon, or James Taylor. How about Nat King Cole, Woody Guthrie, Tony Bennett? And for God's sake, where in the world is James Brown? There's also some noteworthy names that didn't make the list that I'm perfectly okay with. For example, David Gilmour and Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, Jimi Hendrix, Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, Chris Martin from Coldplay, and the biggest name that is rightfully not included on the list, Madonna. But let's shift back to the names that did make the list, specifically the singers that ranked in the top 10. There are R&B singers throughout the top 200, but they essentially make up the entirety of the top 10. Categorically speaking, I don't think any of these artists would be considered first and foremost a rock or country singer, though some have famously dabbled in those genres. No, everyone in the top 10 are true R&B legends, and as such, it should be no surprise that the top 10 is also entirely black. In fact, the highest ranking white artist on the list is the aforementioned John Lennon at number 12. Let me say that again. The greatest white singer of all time is John Lennon. All right, so kicking off the top 10 is Al Green, a singer I fully expected to rank well on this list, but maybe not quite top 10. At number 9 is Otis Redding. For my money, arguably the best soul singer of all time. Number 8 is Beyoncé. No surprise at all to see her in the top 10, but I'm sure there will be many that will say 8 isn't high enough. At number 7 is my favorite act in the top 10, and that's the incredible Stevie Wonder. Number 6 is music pioneer Ray Charles. Again, ridiculously talented, but top 10 as a singer feels a little high to me. At number 5 is Mariah Carey. More than perhaps any other name in the top 10, this is the one I'd expect to have the most naysayers. I'd probably land on the side of her indeed being top 10 material, but probably closer to 9 or 10 than 5. Coming in at number 4 is Billie Holiday. I've always held Billie and Ella in about equal regard, so it's hard for me to accept that one is top 10 and the other is so much further down the list. Number 3 is Sam Cooke, the highest ranking male singer on the list. Think about that in context for a moment. Who is the best male singer of all time? Would you have picked Sam Cooke? I would not. Top 10? I could probably agree to that. But I feel like there are other male singers I'd rank above him. Which brings us to the top 2 singers of all time. Both are women, as we've established. Both are legends, as you would expect to be included on such a list. And one is almost certainly the trailblazer for the other. The second greatest singer of all time, according to Rolling Stone magazine, is Whitney Houston. There's been a lot of chatter about Whitney Houston in the comments section of my videos about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, with a lot of people arguing that she's not rock and roll. I do understand that complaint as far as the Rock Hall goes. But to me, she's a talent that transcends genre. Her voice was a once-in-a-generation event and one that influenced countless singers that followed her. I've personally never been a fan of her music, but I would never deny her impact on the women who followed in her footsteps. Of course, if we're talking about following in anyone's footsteps, it can't be denied that Whitney Houston was following the legend that ranks at number 1 on the list, and that's Aretha Franklin. In so many ways, Aretha was a trailblazer, a talent like no other. Her songs became the soundtrack of an era, songs of celebration, songs of praise, songs of love, and songs of strife and civil unrest. Aretha Franklin was the very first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and as I've long said, it was the precedent set by that induction, along with others, that made sure R&B had a home in the Rock Hall. Whitney was certainly indebted to Aretha for that, among many other things. So for me, it's hard to argue with these top 2 picks. The other 198 rankings are questionable, to say the least. Alright, so as promised, I'm going to finish this video by scrolling through the entire list of Rolling Stone's 200 greatest singers of all time. Take a look and see where your favorites ranked. But also let me know in the comments section what you think about the list. Who would you rank in your top 10? Who do you think should not be on the list at all? Who are the biggest snubs? And looking at this list, do you think there's a clear difference between a singer and a vocalist? Lots to discuss, I'm sure. So, without further ado, here's the complete list. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Plus, check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.